yeah, if you're not bilingual in Korea, you would kind of get fucked.
Yeah, close that. I don't want to install. Just give me a freaking ID.
That's enough. You know, I'm a very impatient woman.
I almost paid for it.
So I give up, I guess. Is that okay?
Let's go. Let's just get.
Okay. But seriously,
This sucks. This really sucks.
yeah.
Welcome to Rock Bottom, the G1 podcast blank slate on culture, life, and interesting little details about Korea. What you just heard was choice cuts from a video from my friends over at Daily Boom. The video is called Foreigners Try Korean Online Shopping, and that is literally the frustration we face every single time. So actually sitting right beside me is today's guest, YouTuber Alex Sigrist of the KoreaNerd channel. He also appears regularly on TBS EFM and Arirang Radio. Alex, frustrating shopping in Korea, yeah?
Yeah, it's not something that I'm a fan of or that I can actually do.
Okay,
and,
so
and we'll figure out why as we go through this.
why, just right off the bat, then why? Like, why is it so frustrating? I mean, it's pretty easy. You have one-click shopping on Amazon in the states where we're from, but why is it so frustrating here in Korea? What's the root of that?
Well, if you're not part of the system, it's a really, really interesting conversation of how technology and government kind of work together, and they sometimes don't work in the best way possible. We're talking about, of course, Korea and ActiveX.
ActiveX is the software developed by Microsoft. I remember that way back when I was in middle school. I read it for the first time. Right. Okay. So
Wow, you were a nerd back then. Good for you.
I was just wondering. I was like, this is a catchy name, right? So ActiveX is the root of our frustration shopping. We just want to give you our money. Why was it originally developed?
Well, it was developed in a way to make using the internet easier. So ActiveX controls are what? They're pieces of software, and they have access to your entire computer. So if you decide to install them, every time it comes up and you click that accept button and you run them, it has access to your computer. And
actually, back in the day, you didn't even have the accept button. When it first started, they were just running, and then that accept button, I remember, was installed later on. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you. Keep going.
It was going so well. So, as I said, it's developed to increase the functionality. So take an example of creating spell checkers. For each of the programs, you have PowerPoint, you have Excel, you have Microsoft Word. Put it very simply so everyone can understand it. It's a way for all these programs that you have to communicate with each other and then make your overall experience on the computer a lot easier.
So like if you spell color with a U, like you're from the UK, right?
Yeah, one of those fake English-speaking countries, right?
Then it'll spell color with a U across all of your PowerPoint, your Excel, and your Microsoft Word, instead of spelling it different ways across each, right? That makes sense, right?
Yeah. Sorry for all the negative likes you got for me making fun of England English. My bad, bro.
Okay, so that's one way of functionality, but that's very offline. What about in terms of the internet? What does ActiveX have to do with the internet?
So ActiveX allows you to load other software applications.
Like we said, Flash Player.
Player. It's especially ID verification plugins. And this is where it has the biggest connection to Korea. Now, ActiveX was not, if you say, as you do, that you read it from the beginning, it was not something that was without controversy, right?
Yeah, so ActiveX, anytime you have something that, guarantees or tries to guarantee security, there's the other side of that. What is the other side of that? What does that mean?
Well, the critics of ActiveX were people who said that security was not good. And for what reason was this? Let's put it again in a simple way. When you're using something like ActiveX, you're collecting a lot of information from yourself, from your computer, that they're using to help make your system work efficiently. And as soon as somebody like a hacker gets access to that information, they have access to a lot of your information. And they didn't quite have the security protections necessary.
Not just your information, but your computer system.
The whole system, yeah. I mean, there's a whole new category of information if you're talking about cyber terrorism, being able to hijack a system. But luckily, as we'll talk about later, ActiveX doesn't have a long lifespan ahead of it.
Okay, so that's one clear disadvantage, is that ActiveX, it can be used to, take over your computer. install malicious software if a hacker was using it and you plugged it in without checking the permissions. What are the advantages? I mean, there's got to be advantages. There's a reason why Korea decided to go on their merry way with it. What are they?
Well, this goes back to our societal kind of struggle, our internal struggle between security versus comfort versus ease. So it does enhance the feature set of applications that we use on a daily basis. Take, for example, Flash Player.
Yeah, that was the way we streamed videos a lot of the time before YouTube, I remember.
Yeah. It does, in a way, allow for certain websites to allow more layers of security, if you will. Like if you're taking internet banking, and now you need to download it to, by the way, work in Korea. This is, we say more security, but this also is related to more of the disadvantages as well.
Yeah. Okay. So, when you want to log in, there's in addition to actually logging in on the website, there's a pop-up that accesses a file on your computer if you've never done internet banking in Korea. And that means you have to carry around a USB drive with that file, or you won't be able to log in from a different computer at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's obviously a disadvantage. What else are the disadvantages of running ActiveX?
Well, the main one is the biggest gripe of all foreigners here in Korea is that you have to use Internet Explorer. And a lot of these websites are also developed with Internet Explorer as the end goal. These aren't like multi-platform websites. These are websites that are developed kind of with Internet Explorer in mind to increase efficiency on that browser. And it's honestly just not the best browser out there.
Yeah, by no means. It's ridiculously slow, takes forever to load, it's archaic. And that also means that developers are only learning how to develop really for Internet Explorer, which is also another set of problems. We won't go into that so much. Mm-hmm. But let's go on to the bigger security risk here, right? We touched upon it just earlier. When you're installing something into your computer, what does that mean from an outside perspective? Like, can someone use that software against you?
Well, yeah, this goes into malicious software. Malicious software is just software that's intended basically to have negative consequences against the user, whether it's to steal information or just put a virus on the computer or whatever the intention is. It really allows for increased vulnerabilities, if you will. And there's
or
a
just
lot
annoyances like pop-ups.
Oh, yeah, and of course, annoyances as well.
Yeah. Most people just click agree without really reading through the terms and things like that.
No.
People
what do you mean?
Me, right?
I read every sentence of my iTunes user agreement, every one, and I send it to my lawyer.
Exactly. So unless you're like Alex, right, then you might have these problems. But we're talking about it within the tech context of Korea. We don't have these ActiveX problems as much in the West, if at all. Why has Korea taken it so hardcore? What was that driving factor there?
Well, this goes way back to their desire to be more secure. And they took an idea of a new technology at the time. ActiveX was new, this idea that you can increase security. But they wanted to do more with the security encryptions that were in place at the time related to internet security. The Korea Information Security Agency considered the 40-bit encryption that was standard at the time too weak. So they wanted to go into a stronger system, and they basically just increased the bits, right? They made it harder to break into encryptions in Korea. So the only way to use this program that was called SEED, unfortunately, was to use it through ActiveX.
So ActiveX was like at the heart of SEED then.
Yes, and you can't, basically with SEED, you couldn't use it with any other plugin, I guess, which means when you, I'm sure the listeners can easily piece this together, that means SEED links Korea to Internet Explorer.
Yeah, as ActiveX is only available on Internet Explorer, right?
Yeah.
That's why they all use Internet Explorer by default, then. That kind of answers that question, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so in the context of Macs, that just means flat out, no.
Yeah, that's not even cool.
A lot of expats, a lot of creative types use Macs, which is unfortunate for them because you can't use Internet Explorer to access a lot of these websites to register things. Like for Korean classes, sometimes you have to do identity verification and things like that. Okay, what else does it mean for expats who just are not as fond of Internet Explorer?
Well, since you've phrased it that way, it means tough luck.
Indeed.
You have to use Internet Explorer for a lot of things. Internet banking They use, like we said, they do try to encourage security systems to be in place, but you have to use ActiveX. And so if you don't have a PC and you're trying to do internet banking and you're trying to pay for stuff with internet banking, you just can't do it. You have to go to a bank or an ATM in person.
Physically.
Physically. So you go to a bank, you have to register for, if it works, you have to go to a bank, register in person for internet banking, and there's a lot of steps there. And if you're still stubborn like me and you don't want to use Internet Explorer and you want to purchase stuff online, you can't. You have to go to an ATM and send money to an account. You have to transfer money to an account for a supermarket to get things done. So either way, it takes a lot of steps. It's just way too complicated for what it needs to be.
It sounds like places like Amazon, one-click shopping are just concepts that are not happening here, right?
That's really funny.
And also, let's say that you actually want to buy something, right? And you actually sign up for internet shopping. You have to download the plugins and things like that. It takes forever. It crashes your computer from time to time.
Oh, yeah.
If you're using a website and you use 무통장 입금, which is what I often do, the internet bank account transfer, you still have to open up your bank account on the web, which uses ActiveX, which is super annoying.
If you don't have a PC,
impossible.
Can't even do it anyway.
Right. And also the problem lies in that a lot of websites use your name in Hangul and not in English.
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes when you originally register for a website, you spell your name differently. And it's not easy because Koreans will have their own way of spelling your name. And you if you lived in Korea, I know like for certain places, the way you spell my name is different in Hangul and than it is on, say, like my business card. Yeah. And there's just no way to really wrinkle out all those, iron out all those wrinkles.
Yeah, and not all websites. I mean, forget Hangul. I've actually had problems with just using capitalization, and sometimes like Korean websites.
Yeah, I've had that as well.
They're I don't know. I'm assuming, I don't have the information on this, but I'm assuming it just means like we only recognize 26 characters, and that means we don't recognize lowercase. And so sometimes you're only putting in all uppercase for it to work. So you're trying like different ways. Do I start with my last name? Do I start with my first name? Do I include my middle name? Do I not include my middle name? Do I have to capitalize my first letter but not the rest, or do I capitalize all of them? And it's just more
tedious,
problems.
Right?
It's more effort.
Yeah. Okay, so that's how expats feel. For the most part, that's our sentiment. Very frustrating, but we only constitute a small amount of the population, right? How do Koreans feel about ActiveX and how it's used? Well,
it's a little complicated in that when you talk to Korean, they'll often say, well, just deal with it. Just, if I've complained about this before and they just, well, that's just the way it is.
This is Korea.
Go to a PC. This is Korea.
Learn Korean.
And learn Korean.
Yeah, of course.
But it doesn't mean that Koreans are necessarily complacent. They're just aware of the reality of the situation. In fact, 84.1% of Koreans think that they do in fact need other programs other than ActiveX. That was 41% that said it's necessary to get another program, 43.5% that said it's very necessary.
Okay, so those numbers roughly 84%. When was that?
That was actually a whole year before the Ministry of Science, ICT, and Future Planning announced that they're going to remove their dependency on ActiveX. They're trying to get rid of that. So that would make it
okay,
this survey
so
2014.
Okay, so they're actually trying to remove it right now.
Well, we can only go based on what they've said.
Okay, so where are we going from here then? Koreans are unhappy or very unhappy. According to the poll, foreigners are almost universally unhappy. Where are we going from here?
Well, so the Korean government did say in 2010 they're going to withdraw their mandate, governing the use of ActiveX plugins. There was a mandate, and that's something that...
But they've repealed it now. Kudos, right?
They have.
But that was a long time ago.
Yeah, but there's a catch. If a company wants to stop using this plugin, this company has to use an alternative technology. It has to equal the security measures that the ActiveX program allowed. And like we said, there's security vulnerabilities with ActiveX, but the ActiveX plugin allows you to increase security in your next steps with the other plugins that you're dealing with.
Okay, so...
And you have to get approval to use this technology from the government as well, which, again, bureaucracy is slow.
So you actually have to develop something equivalent to ActiveX to get off of ActiveX.
Or better, yeah. I can't help but assume there was some backdoor lobbying here to make sure that maybe ActiveX or Internet Explorer, whatever is working to keep it here.
That's something of a cynical viewpoint. I'm going to call you out on that. But
It's very cynical, but I do not say this is a Korea only thing. You know, I keep my cynicism for other countries as well, including around the US.
Let's keep let's say even if someone did have the best intentions of developing, you have to get it adopted by people. Right, you have to get it universally adopted.
There's no guarantee that people are gonna also go with the change. But you know, on the optimistic side, I do think Korea is a country that is more likely to jump on newer technologies. They do kind of, at least the younger generation, the people that were around all the time, are more likely to embrace new technologies. So I'm a little more optimistic on that end.
Okay, so flashing forward now to just last year, actually. Microsoft was dropping Internet Explorer. Remember that?
Yeah, that was huge news.
Yeah.
At least in the foreigner community here.
Why was that?
Because we're sick of it.
Yeah.
Because we're sick of using Internet Explorer, or at least being forced to use it, especially the community that uses Macs over PCs.
And like we said, ActiveX is...
It's a huge part. It's pervasive in most websites in Korea, almost all of them actually. If anything was developed before 2010, it's guaranteed to have been developed with Internet Explorer as the end goal in mind. So everything that we use is basically developed around Internet Explorer, and now they've dropped out Internet Explorer.
What does that mean?
It means that ActiveX is kind of not necessary unless you use old versions of a lot of these.
Well, I wouldn't say
programs.
not necessary, just not supported.
Well, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, like in Korea, it's still very necessary for these companies, but it's just flat out not supported anymore, right?
So this is where I think the Korean government has said the right things. You will see if it goes through on it. But the Ministry of Science, ICT, Future Planning, again, April 1st. April 1st.
April
think
Fools.
about that. April 4th, 2015. They said they're going to try and remove their dependency on ActiveX from at least 90 of their top 100 websites by 2017. And they're also they're starting with the private sector, but they're also going to move over and make sure that their public sector websites as well.
That's curious that you wouldn't start with the public sector, but whatever.
Well, that goes into...
I guess shopping is more important, right?
Private companies can get stuff done faster. That is the advantage of being a company.
That is true. Okay, so we're moving off of Internet Explorer because, well, Microsoft's not supporting it anymore. Mm-hmm. They're going to develop something else for security because that's the mandate, right?
Yeah. So the Korea Trade Network, or KTNET, says the new authentication certificate program is going to work on obviously more than Internet Explorer. You've got Firefox, you've got Chrome, you've got the Windows 10 Edge browser. I'm assuming as well it would include Safari here, although what I read didn't state that itself.
Okay. That means a huge shift for Koreans. About what percentage of Koreans are going to be moving over to something else or can now move over to something else? Not necessarily will be, but can.
Yeah, you have about, at this point, 68% of Koreans regularly use Internet Explorer, and only 27% use Chrome, and the rest of it, Firefox, Safari, is a much, much lower number. But so they're going to have to change, but like I said earlier, I do believe the Korean public, they're early adopters. I mean, they can do it.
And they're frustrated. That's a
and
huge
they're frustrated too. Yeah.
Right. Let's go to Reddit for some comments. This was big news when it originally came out. You're going to take the cynical side here because I feel like that's your vibe today. Okay, this user, Korea Jim, says what?
$100 says if they do get rid of it, they'll just replace it with something else that still differs from the international standard and only works domestically. I can't imagine them not requiring a citizen ID every time you buy something.
For shizzle.
Oh my gosh.
That's cynical, but I feel like it hits mark. How do you feel about that comment?
I kind of agree with it. I do know that one of the ways they tried to propose getting over it was to develop another .exe program, which if you're a nerd, you know right away that doesn't help your Mac problem at all.
Sometimes it doesn't help your Mac problem, and it just means you're installing more software, one specific piece of software to use one specific website. That's irritating. Let's go to a slightly more optimistic outlook by Chicken and Liver. and I'm
Please,
going to paraphrase.
You take the optimism here and make everyone see you're the good guy.
Korea is going to be forcefully dragged into internationalized tech standards, which really was a process which started with the arrival of the iPhone, and then the user goes on to say, you can only fight the tide for so long. The days are coming, my friends. I'm hopeful services like Kakao and their bank wallet and so on, which are, Korea only, will fill the gap. It might be Korea-centric, but at least it's properly translated into English, a godsend, which is something none of the big established players seem to be able to get right.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to point out that drives this shift, other than, Microsoft saying we're not doing Internet Explorer and therefore not doing ActiveX anymore, is foreign purchases. The old system makes buying from Korean websites virtually impossible for non-Koreans, especially internationally, and President Park Geun-hye has acknowledged this, right, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, this was a big part of her platform when she was trying to get elected. She's acknowledged that the online authentication certificates, the ones that are based on ActiveX,
for sure,
are definitely an obstacle. And you and I have both tried to purchase. It's really frustrating when you try to give money to people and they don't accept it. Like, I want to give Korean companies my money because I want something.
Yeah,
but it's not working.
And money talks, especially when you're a politician, right?
Yeah. And so those who want to purchase products costing more than 300,000 won at a local online shopping mall, you have to use an online certificate, authentication certificate service
based off of ActiveX, right?
Yeah, and so if this change happens, that'll be great for not only foreigners trying to get a hold of it, but also for Korean companies that want to make money. They want to sell. They want to make profits.
All right, we're running out of time here, but I remember you had a great little anecdote or a great an example for which you wanted to share with us about ActiveX in Korea. Lay it on me, bro.
Okay, so basically, here's a way for everyone to understand it. You remember the Segway, right?
Yeah, the auto balancing.
Yeah, the original one that kind of looked like a dorky scooter in a way. Right? Think of it like this. Imagine if Korea, which is always willing to jump on new technologies, decided to jump on the new Segway. And they said, look, we're going to start introducing Segway parking spots, Segway drive-thrus at fast food joints, the walkways, escalators are going to be all developed so that Segways can get around easily. And all the while you've got these other things like these cooler self-balancing ones that don't have handles or they're just developed differently are entering the marketplace, and they're awesome. But it would take more money to go back and make it friendly for them. So just keep doing it. It's working now with Segways. Let's just keep developing these awesome Segway pathways around Korea.
Even though other Segway models are kind of outpacing
but that would cost a lot of money to fix the problem, right?
Okay.
But all of a sudden, Segway stops making the original scooter. They did. They stopped making. They've got a new version themselves, and let's face it, it wasn't good. The first one wasn't good enough. It was a great start, but it was awkward. Now where are you at? You're at a whole system that relies on Segways. That's
something that the manufacturers no longer make anymore.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we have. Just replace Segway with, well, you can replace it with either ActiveX or an Explorer.
Oh, okay. Well, there we have it. Alex Sigrist from the KoreaNerd. Thank you so much.
Yep, it's good to see you.
이번 연도 4단